Background and early political career. Martin Van Buren was born into a Dutch-American family in Kinderhook, New York. His father was a tavern owner who was also involved in local politics, giving Van Buren early exposure to the political world from a young age. Although he did not come from a wealthy background, his sharp intellect and determination enabled him to rise and become one of the most influential politicians of his time. Lacking the means to attend college, Van Buren studied law through an apprenticeship at a law office and quickly became a skilled attorney. He began his political career at the local level, gradually building his reputation through elections and strategic alliances with powerful politicians. One of Van Buren's earliest major achievements was his key role in organizing and shaping the political system in New York. He became the leader of a political group known as the Albany Regency, a highly influential organization in New York politics. Thanks to his adept political maneuvering, Van Buren steadily emerged as a leading figure in the Democratic Party, laying the groundwork for his future national political career. Political career and role in government. With his political acumen and talent for building alliances, Martin Van Buren quickly expanded his influence beyond New York. He was elected to the U.S. Senate, where he became a key voice in national politics. A proponent of a small but efficient government, Van Buren supported reducing federal power and granting more autonomy to individual states, particularly in economic matters. During his years in the Senate, Van Buren played a crucial role in shaping the modern Democratic Party. He was one of the chief architects of the two-party political system, helping to establish the Democratic Party as a formidable force against the Whigs. His skillful negotiations allowed him to unite various political factions, ranging from advocates of limited federal government to supporters of farmers' and laborers' rights. In 1829, President Andrew Jackson appointed Van Buren as U.S. Secretary of State, one of the most powerful positions in the government. In this role, he made significant contributions to foreign policy, maintaining peaceful relations with Britain, and expanding U.S. influence in Latin America. He was also a key ally of Jackson in the fight against the National Bank, a highly controversial issue at the time. However, internal conflicts within Jackson's cabinet led Van Buren to resign as Secretary of State in 1831. Despite this, Jackson continued to hold him in high regard and later nominated him as U.S. Minister to Britain. The Senate, however, rejected his nomination, partly due to opposition from political rivals. Ironically, this setback boosted Van Buren's prominence, as many saw him as a victim of partisan politics. In 1832, Jackson selected Van Buren as his vice president for his second term. In this role, Van Buren remained a key figure in the administration and was seen as Jackson's natural successor. With strong backing from both Jackson and the Democratic Party, he became the frontrunner in the next presidential election. His political career reached its peak when he won and was inaugurated as the 8th President of the United States in 1837. Presidency and challenges. Martin Van Buren assumed the presidency in 1837 with high expectations from the Democratic Party, especially supporters of Andrew Jackson. However, he faced one of the most severe economic crises in U.S. history, the Panic of 1837, almost immediately after taking office. This crisis stemmed from the policies of his predecessor, Andrew Jackson, particularly the decision to dismantle the National Bank and transfer federal funds to smaller state banks, known as pet banks. Excessive credit expansion, combined with an executive order requiring land purchases to be made with gold or silver instead of paper money, destabilized the economy. As a result, numerous banks collapsed, commodity prices plummeted, unemployment soared, and the nation fell into a deep recession. Van Buren faced immense pressure to resolve the crisis, but he believed the federal government should not intervene directly in the economy. He refused to use government funds to bail out struggling banks or businesses, a decision that drew heavy criticism. Instead, he championed the independent treasury system, which separated government funds from commercial banks. While this policy aimed to create long-term financial stability, it did little to alleviate the immediate economic downturn, and the Depression persisted. Beyond economic challenges, Van Buren also grappled with political and social conflicts. One of the most controversial aspects of his presidency was his handling of Native American policies. He continued Jackson's Indian removal program, which led to the infamous Trail of Tears, the forced relocation of thousands of Cherokee people to present-day Oklahoma. Many perished due to starvation and disease along the journey. While widely condemned today, this policy was supported at the time by many white settlers in the South and West. Slavery also posed significant political challenges during Van Buren's tenure. He attempted to maintain a balance between anti-slavery northern states and pro-slavery southern states. However, his neutral stance failed to satisfy either side. One of the most notable events during his presidency was the 1839 Amistad case, in which a group of enslaved Africans rebelled on a Spanish ship and sought their freedom. The case became a major legal battle, ultimately leading the U.S. Supreme Court to grant the captives their freedom. Though Van Buren, under pressure from the South, favored deporting them back to Cuba, he was unable to override the court's decision, further alienating Southern slaveholders. In foreign policy, Van Buren pursued a diplomatic and non-confrontational approach, avoiding military conflicts. One of the biggest international disputes he faced was a border conflict between the U.S. and Britain over Maine and Canada. The tensions escalated into the so-called Aroostook War, though no actual battles took place. Van Buren successfully negotiated a peaceful resolution, preventing an unnecessary war with Britain. However, his cautious foreign policy cost him political support. When Texas sought annexation into the U.S., Van Buren refused to endorse it, fearing it would provoke war with Mexico and intensify the slavery debate between North and South. This decision alienated many Southern expansionists who viewed Texas as crucial to the survival of slavery-based economies. By the 1840 election, Van Buren faced fierce opposition. The Whig Party capitalized on the economic recession, nominating war hero William Henry Harrison, who was portrayed as a strong leader and a champion of the common people. The election campaign of 1840 became one of the most populist in American history, featuring the famous Whig slogan, "Tippecanoe and Tyler too." The Whigs painted Van Buren as an out-of-touch elitist who lived lavishly while ordinary Americans suffered from the Depression. Ultimately, Van Buren suffered a decisive defeat as Harrison won by a landslide. The loss was a major blow, but it did not mark the end of Van Buren's political career. Even after leaving the White House, he remained influential in national debates, particularly on the issues of slavery and territorial expansion. While his presidency was marred by economic struggles and controversy, Van Buren's policies, especially the independent treasury system, laid the foundation for future U.S. financial systems. Moreover, his role in shaping the modern two-party system ensured his lasting impact on American politics. Final years and legacy. After his defeat in the 1840 election, Martin Van Buren left the White House with the reputation of a president overwhelmed by economic crisis and political opposition. However, he did not completely withdraw from politics and continued to seek a path back to influence. In the following years, he remained a significant figure within the Democratic Party and even attempted another run for the presidency. Attempted comeback in 1844. In 1844, Van Buren sought the presidency once more, hoping to reclaim power. He retained support from moderate factions within the Democratic Party, but his stance on the Texas annexation issue cost him crucial backing from Southern Democrats. As Texas pushed for U.S. statehood, many Southern politicians supported annexation, viewing it as an opportunity to expand slavery. However, Van Buren opposed annexing Texas, fearing it would lead to war with Mexico and further intensify North-South tensions over slavery. This position alienated him from pro-slavery Democrats, who instead backed James K. Polk, an advocate for territorial expansion. As a result, Van Buren lost the Democratic nomination, effectively ending his hopes of returning to the presidency. Shift toward anti-slavery politics. Following his 1844 defeat, Van Buren gradually shifted his stance on slavery. Early in his career, he had taken a centrist approach, seeking to appease both pro- and anti-slavery factions. However, by the late 1840s, he increasingly aligned himself with anti-slavery movements, particularly as the issue of slavery's expansion into new territories became more pressing. In 1848, Van Buren made another presidential run, not as a Democrat, but as the candidate of the newly formed Free Soil Party, a movement dedicated to preventing the spread of slavery into Western territories. The party's slogan, "Free Soil, Free Labor, Free Men," underscored its opposition to slavery's expansion. Van Buren's candidacy was not expected to win, but he gained significant support from Northern voters, pulling enough Democratic votes away from Lewis Cass to help Whig candidate Zachary Taylor win the presidency. Although he lost, Van Buren's campaign helped elevate the anti-slavery cause, laying the groundwork for the emergence of the Republican Party in the 1850s. Final years. After the 1848 election, Van Buren retired from active politics, spending his final years at his estate in Kinderhook, New York. Though he no longer held public office, he closely followed national events, reflecting on his political career and writing memoirs. During this time, the U.S. faced rising tensions over slavery, leading to the Civil War in 1861. Van Buren, though too old to participate in the conflict, expressed support for the Union and President Abraham Lincoln's efforts to preserve the nation. He witnessed the early years of the war before passing away on July 24, 1862, at the age of 79. His death came as the nation was embroiled in its most defining struggle. Legacy. Although Van Buren is not often ranked among America's greatest presidents, his impact on U.S. politics was significant. His key contributions include architect of the two-party system. Van Buren played a crucial role in organizing the Democratic Party and shaping the two-party system that continues in American politics today. The independent treasury system. While controversial at the time, this policy laid the foundation for a more stable federal financial system and influenced later economic reforms. Early anti-slavery advocacy. Though initially moderate on slavery, his 1848 campaign helped energize the abolitionist movement and contributed to the rise of the Republican Party. Commitment to peaceful foreign policy. Van Buren consistently sought diplomatic solutions, avoiding unnecessary wars with Britain and Mexico. While his presidency was marked by economic hardship and political challenges, his broader influence on party politics, financial systems, and the fight against slavery left a lasting mark on American history. Van Buren was not just a politician, but a strategic thinker whose ideas helped shape the future of the United States.